Hey everyone, welcome to the Worship Artistry podcast. My name is Jason Houtsma, and with me is
Christina Kasanka.
Christina. What is an album that has just kind of touched your soul? Like what's something that you heard and you were like, man, like this is going to live in my heart for a while.
He did not prepare me for this question. But I have been, I can't answer this question. I need to think about it for a long time. But today I've been listening to the Born and Raised album from John Mayer. That's what I keep singing.
Oh, it's hard to tell. There's a lot of times you sing things in the office and you're just making them up and then they sound like other things.
It's true. But so I'm actually singing, I keep singing The Age of Worry, which is a great song.
Yeah? Why is it so great?
It's just beautifully written and it is stuck in my head.
Beautifully written in what way? What do you like about it?
I can't think about this, Jason.
Yes, you
can. I need to ponder and dissect. I just haven't heard a song like it, I don't think.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know if I've even heard that song.
I actually heard it from someone covered it, an artist I like called Madison Cunningham, I believe is her last name. I know it's Cunning, and I don't know if it's Tun or Ham. I think it's Ham.
I feel like Ham. Ham sounds right.
Yeah. But she did a cover of it, and I listened. I was like, oh, this song is great. And I looked at the writers, and it was John Mayer, and I was like, what? And then I had to go find John Mayer and listen to that album. But I'm listening to it today, and it's just the perfect little, a vibe.
You're somebody who always checks who writes a song.
Always.
You're always looking at the credits.
I have to know. Especially worship songs.
Why?
Because everyone's collaborating, and sometimes I like to play a game to see if I can guess who the writers are. Especially if I know it's from if it's from a group that I know all the writers or know all the artists there, or if it's someone that collaborates often. Mm-hmm. And then I listen to it and I try to see if I can't guess who they collaborated with.
It's funny how certain artists they'll do certain intervals, like vocal intervals, the melodies kind of tend to the chorus hits this. And I've definitely had a few moments where I've been like, I bet you I know who wrote this song.
Yeah, especially lyrically too. There's one, if there's a Hillsong song that has a lot of words, I can guarantee you that Benjamin Hastings is a writer on it.
So Resurrender.
Yes.
Is it he's on that one?
I'm pretty sure.
Because we haven't released it yet, but I have taught it. And
it is
a lot of words.
I know Brooke is for sure a writer on that one. I don't remember if Benjamin is.
It's a good song. It took me, it was actually surprisingly not that difficult to teach. A lot of times those longer songs they can be like, oh my gosh, and there's multiple bridges, and all the words are really thoughtful.
Right. No, he wrote So Will I.
Yeah, So Will I.
And Seasons and several from the Hillsong United album, the last one. But there's a ton. He writes beautifully. He's such a very poetic in his writing, but it's a lot. And so whenever I listen to a song with a lot of words, I know. Do
you tend to use those types in your congregations, in your congregational setting, or are those kind of
no,
not for this?
As a reminder, I lead at a church with where it's primarily Slavic, so I sing all of our songs in both languages, or I try to if I can find a good translation.
Show off.
So, not to brag or anything. But
sometimes I put them in French too, just because.
I just throw it in just for fun. No, I because of that, I have to stay away from songs with tons of words, just because it's a lot harder. Well, for one thing, for people to sing, and two, to sing in two languages. It's just a lot. So songs like So Will I love for my personal time, and I'll listen to them. They're on my worship playlist and things, but it's not one that I will lead on a Sunday morning.
Yeah. I'm kind of the same way. It's funny, even as a worship, I write a lot of songs for our church, but I am still kind of steeped in the rock pop country world that it's it's a verse, it's a chorus, it's another verse, it's a bridge, and then maybe two choruses.
Yep.
If I get crazy, we're going back to the bridge. It really landed. But
I always come back to the bridge.
But worship songs tend to have a much longer span of time, and so when you add a ton of words on top of all of it, it can be a lot. Hard. It can be a lot to take in.
For sure.
The reason why I ask you is because today we have Mosaic MSC on the podcast, and there is you'll hear me gush about it a little bit. I always I always, listen to music. Anytime we have an artist on, I always want to be familiar with their work and what they're doing because it's really awkward. Like I remember one guy, I had him on the podcast. He's like, man, it's so nice to talk to you because you actually know what I'm doing. So I just got off a thing where they clearly have no idea who I am and they're interviewing me. And I'm like, that's horrible.
Yeah.
So, I was familiar with Mosaic's work. My church is named Mosaic, so I'm very familiar with them because I always have to say, no association whatsoever, but I always have to say like, oh yeah, I'm a worship pastor at Mosaic. Like not that one, not the one that the small little one in Bellingham, Washington. But yeah, so I put on their latest record and man, it kind of smacked me upside the head. Like it's beautiful. It's very different. It's a very different approach. And so we really kind of, I listened to it right before the interview and I was just like, we're just talking about the music and the production and how you guys went about it and the thought process behind it. Yeah. And it's really fascinating because it is very intentional. You can tell that they might not get asked this question all the time, but they have an answer for it.
Yeah.
And so I just got to really dive into their new record with them and we had a great time. So without further ado, from Mosaic MSC, Andres Figueroa and Carlos Pimental. Guys, welcome to the Worship Artistry podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Well, I have to, so I probably shouldn't say this. Normally,
thank you. Thanks for having us.
Normally, it's whenever we do a podcast interview with an artist, I always I throw on the record and I get some time to sit with it. And then, I kind of make notes of like, wow, this is, I like this song. I want to ask about this. And then, kind of go through it. And I've got to tell you, I did not do that for your record because when I put it on, I couldn't just stop listening to it. And I don't mean that to stroke your ego, but seriously, it's unreal. I listen to a lot of worship songs. I listen to a lot of worship records. And I think there's something really unique about what you guys have done. And so I'd love to kind of really just kind of talk through the record, kind of hear your thoughts on different songs and, production and kind of your intention around it. It just struck me as so unique. Things that stood out to me were just like, the production was very simple, vocals being very out front, but sitting in the mix really nicely, interesting melodies, just so many things that I was just even song content and everything else. So maybe we could just start off. You guys could tell us just kind of what was your thought going into this record?
I think I can start us off. This record was very unique because it's kind of it's our, in a way you can say it's our COVID album. Mm-hmm. It's we wrote it and recorded and produced everything, while most of the time just basically being in lockdown here in California. And so that in of itself is such a brand new thing because what it meant was usually our processes will write songs and then we'll test them live, with the people, and that kind of informs what makes it or what doesn't, but this time we were just going by, what we felt like was the most honest song, what we felt like was the song that we personally just all loved, really connected to. And so in that sense, it was a risk, because we didn't have at least the feedback from before of live, of being in the room. So we weren't sure, of how it was all going to work out. And then add to that is that this was all 100% produced ourselves. We did it all with our team. And because always we mostly produce things and write things ourselves, but then we'll always add one or two other people, for some extra production or mixing or something like that. We still outsource mixing for sure, but it's this one was very much everything from start to finish ourselves. And so that was also a risk, and that was also, I guess informs the uniqueness of the sound, because even though this is, I don't know, maybe our fifth album or something like that, in a lot of ways I feel like we're constantly discovering who we are, like sonically, and I feel like this is probably the closest step we've taken to where we land. And then lastly, I think that this record was, because of the pandemic and everything, it was like the most maybe personal and honest one that we've done, because that's why I love that the opening track, like How Do I Thank You, that Mariah and Colin wrote, is such a great opening track because it kind of encapsulates the whole album, where on the one hand it's like, how do I thank you for all the good things that you've given me, like how can I express my gratitude, but then on the other hand, like very practically, how do I thank you for all the things that I don't love, that are hard, like how, because in an ideal sense, you want to have a posture of gratitude even in those times, right? Like,
Right.
I don't get this, but thank you, God. So it's like, so I love the honesty of that. Like, how do I, how can I just, overall, I just want to be more grateful and always have a posture of gratitude, which is why we love that as the opening track, and why ultimately the album just ended up being, This Is How I Thank the Lord. So yeah, I think all of those things, hopefully that answers your question in terms of like how we were approaching it when we started, and what we were thinking as we were going into it.
Well, gratitude is such you guys had such a great approach to it, I thought, because gratitude is something that we struggle with singing about as the church. I feel like when I'm looking for songs that are specifically about gratitude, there's not a whole lot out there. We're great about singing about the cross. We're okay about singing about the resurrection. We're great about asking God to be present with us. But that next step of like that daily sense of gratitude of like, this is what you've done for me. This is what you are doing for me. This is this thing that you are doing that I'm not happy about. Gratitude is still such a response. I mean, did you guys think about the fact that like, or as that being the theme, like, did you find it interesting that you're in this pandemic and nobody enjoyed that? Nobody thought that was awesome. I mean, maybe a few introverts for like the first week or two.
Yeah.
Even my introvert friends were like losing their minds. So did you think it was kind of interesting that you guys went with gratitude as a theme for really what feels like the whole record?
Yeah, it was definitely, Jason, it was definitely a surprise. Like, um, even the song, This Is How I Thank the Lord, we wrote it in our first writing retreat or camp that we did after not being together for almost 6 months. And we left LA because LA was insane, and we were very isolated and couldn't go out. Restaurants were closed. There was so much going on here. And then we ended up going to this like a really cool house in Mexico. And the third day writing, we get hit by this storm where we ended up like losing power, water for like 2 days, and we're like, what's going on? We're here running away from the storm of COVID and everything that's happening in LA, and then we find ourselves in a different type of storm, and it was very interesting and very surprising to us that the songs that came out of that trip were songs like This Is How I Thank the Lord. We felt surprised by God in that sense of, we were not necessarily in the most like grateful place in that moment, but still that was a declaration, and it is what came from that moment. There's a lot of other stuff that we can talk about, but we were also like going through really hard times as families and friends, and like really like struggling in some areas, and still we look back and we felt like the gratitude that came out of that moment, it was earned. It was it's not this like superficial way of saying thank you without going through hard times. It's like, no, we went through some stuff this last year, And even that it was hard, the response was gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and even if God doesn't do anything else for us ever again, we do have enough reasons to be grateful.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and definitely once we ended up putting all the songs together, and you see the theme of gratitude like intertwined in all the songs, and it's special to us. Like even like I was listening to the album on my way to work today, and I can feel it in my spirit, you know, like,
Mm-hmm.
man, I feel this deep sense of gratitude, but it's not a hippie bubbly gratitude, you know. It's like it's actually comes with pain, you know. It's a gratitude. It's like, God, you know, you were with me through like really tough times this year.
Mm-hmm. Well, I thought that was one of the things I wrote down. I was like, this is like grateful and joyful and not cheesy. Like it doesn't feel superficial at all. It feels like there's that depth. And so not just only lyrically, but even just musically, how did you guys communicate that feeling musically? You did it really well. I was curious if you had kind of thoughts like how you approach this particular record.
I think a lot of the sonic shaping, you know, I have to shout out Aaron Wheats and Colin and our friend Otto from Mexico City. Like the three of them are like kind of like the kind of producer engineers that like help us, you know, tracking demo, like from demo all the way to album. And I think that a lot of so we went to a couple of places. We went to Mexico and we went to Wyoming, and I think somewhere in Northern California to kind of like write and record this album. Mostly the writing, and I honestly think that those locations kind of informed a little bit of the sound. Like there's like there's some songs that feel like you're like you know, in just in a living room, or some songs feel like you're, you know, maybe like outside and like maybe at like someone's porch or something like that. But there's always like kind of like an intimacy, I feel like, to the sound in general. And I think a practical part is a lot of the stuff, how it was recorded, you know. And then one thing that was kind of unique on how we recorded a lot of the vocals too is we recorded a lot of the BGVs, and yeah, a lot of our vocals we did it in our building empty, in our church building empty, in like a circle, like so all of us like sang together. And I know that's like it's like communal, but then also because there's only like 5 or 6 of us, it's also kind of intimate. You know, and we're all kind of almost like singing at each other or singing to each other or singing together. So I think that somehow, you know, and we use that, like all of you would think like it's unusable if you're singing next to the other person, you know what I mean? Like how are you?
Yeah.
But we were able to use it, and credit to everybody, you know, for singing on key. But but it's like we I think that capturing that, like there's something about that. Maybe there's like I'm reaching here, but I really feel like honestly all of us, like the, you know, the 8 or 9 of us that are part of the MSC core, and then like our spouses and like our close friends, we really leaned on each other during these past 2 years.
Yeah.
And it was we needed each other a lot, you know. And so I think that how somehow that's, you know, recording vocals that way, somehow that's in the album. You know, this album, I think for one thing I love about it personally is that this is the first time that I get almost all the vocalists on certain songs. You know what I mean? Like Mariah might be leading a song, but then like Rob or Carlos or Brooke, like you'll hear them in the bridges, or you can distinguish, like, because everybody's kind of like, it's not so much just, even though for each song obviously there's like a lead vocalist, but I love that everybody's kind of present in every song. So yeah, I feel like I'm going on a tangent here, but I feel like that really kind of shaped a lot of the sounds and sonics of the album.
Any thoughts on that, Carlos?
Yeah, I mean, like the album took 2 years from the moment we started writing the songs to the moment we released the album. So I think there's also something to that with the patient, and also like what Andy said in the beginning, this is like the first time that we produced. We did everything on our own except mixing. It was a journey. It was an exploration. Like we recorded like the demos, and then on once we decided like the structure of the song, we went in the studio and we tracked drums and bass, and we tried like different types of like drum like patterns and stuff. And um, we came back to our little studio here at the church, and we started listening back to, like, I mean, if you know anything about music, like it doesn't make sense. We have a
Mm-hmm.
track basically like of a pad or like a basic chord progression, and then like super loud drums and bass and like the original vocals from the demo. It's like, well, I don't know, just like a weird, a very interesting approach to like producing something. And then from there, we added it like the real piano, and we started adding different elements. And we got to a point where we felt we were like almost there, but we couldn't like necessarily hear like the tone of the album. And we sent the album to get mixed to do like a pre-mix. We got it back, and we like, okay, I think we actually have something that we can work with. And that's when we did what Andy was talking about. It was very special, like tracking the vocals in the round, like in a way that everyone that knows about music and about engineering, they were like, that's not going to work. That doesn't make sense. And we did it, and it worked out. And I think that's part of what makes the sound the way that it is. It was an exploration for us. Like we wanted the song to feel authentic, to feel real. We have a couple songs that the lead vocals, they're like the original vocals from the moment that we tracked the demos,
Oh wow.
which I think was like pretty cool. Like we tried, and it's not that we tried not doing it better. We tried doing it better, but it didn't capture the same energy or the same authenticity that the demo had. And we just like, hey, like we know that this is imperfect, but we want it like this. So yeah, it was definitely, it was a journey. It was a very interesting journey, and we're super happy with the album. And I mean, everything that you're saying about it is like, it makes us feel, to me, like it makes me feel so happy, because it's part of what we were trying to do. And just hearing people expressing that that's what they get from the album is definitely very special.
Yeah.
So how did you guys avoid, like, sometimes time is a gift and sometimes it's a curse, right? Like
It is.
when you've got all that time, there's certain, like, I can sit there and just, when I'm recording something, play a thing a million times and finally just be like, I just need to throw this away. Like,
Yeah.
how did you guys parse through all the things that you were putting on there? I mean, were you kind of like laying down a lot and then kind of like pulling stuff out? How did you hit those decision points and go like, no, this is where this belongs? This is, because I think you could almost like drive yourself crazy over listening and overthinking it. How did you keep a good space there?
Yeah, I think like that's where we have Mariah McManus. She runs our worship team, and like I think at the end, like she makes a lot of like when we have to like make a decision final about something, like she will always like lead the way with that. And there's moments that she's like, hey, you make a decision, because we got to move and we cannot stay in this loop, because if not, the song is going to die. We had a lot of those moments where we had to stop, go home, come back to the song, and we were super unsure about it until like something happened that it clicked with the song, and we're like, okay, like we're in the right track. Let's finish this. And like I think at the same time, like even that it took that long, I feel like that for me was an excuse to like actually be around my friends and like be creative. You know, like I think like there's something special about being creative in a moment of going through hard things. And it was like, it was my silver lining, like being able to come to church and like hang out with my friends and keep working over and over again in these songs. And but yeah, like yeah, towards the end we got to a point that we're like, hey, we gotta stop. we gotta turn this into the label because we gotta put some music out. And we did it. And even like, it's a funny story, we turned the whole album like 2 weeks before our deadline with Capital. And we went back and started listening to the demos, and we found another two songs, one of them called I Need You Now and How Could I Explain. We listened to the demos and we're like, hey, these two songs are pretty cool, and they're like almost done. So we call our team at Capital and we're like, hey, do you guys think we can add another two songs? I know that we already submitted the album. And they're like, I mean, if you can finish the song it was not 2 weeks, it was a week actually. If you guys can finish the song in a week, of course we can do it. So we went back to the studio, and like in 2 days, like we finished the songs, send it to mixing, to mastering, and we ended up adding these two amazing addition that I feel like it actually like it made the whole like body of work more cohesive and more like even like more connected.
Yeah, they all very much feel like they're meant to be on this project.
Yeah.
Like they all match, they all fit together. I loved one of my favorite parts about it is the way that there's moments of intensity, but they still feel intimate. It's not just banging away and getting super loud and like, well, we just got to get louder, we just got to get bigger. You know, it seems like there's like this intentional restraint around things. Do you feel like, did you do that intentionally? Did you feel like that was a little bit like forced due to the situation? How did you pull that off? Because I think very few people do it well.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting that you say that because I do think now, thinking back, that this might be one of our albums that, you know, has the most restraint. Like there is a lot of intimacy, there is a lot of reflection on it. And I honestly, I think it's as simple as just like, that's where we were, you know? And you know, to give you an example of that, like we just went on another writing retreat for like the next album, right? Like, and
just get one out the door and immediately like,
yeah.
well, see ya. On to the
Yeah,
next.
so we just, you know, and now the good thing too is like now we can write stuff, and you know, we're back, like our church is back, like we're meeting in person, you know, so we can actually go back to, part of it is not even just for an album, it's just for having music to play at church, you know. And we love to play our own stuff, right? And like as much as we can, we want to create here. Not to say that there are, you know, tons of worship music that we love, but the thing is, this last writing retreat, we wrote so many, maybe disproportionately so many like high energy, like upbeat songs. And we talked about like, hey, it'd be cool
Seriously, like Jason,
write...
you're gonna hate the next record.
Yeah.
So
It was kind of funny, but even though we had talked about like wanting to do more upbeat stuff, but it wasn't like, with any session, you know, it's not a good idea to be like, I want to write an upbeat, like necessarily, right? Because you might shoehorn yourself. So, but it came out across the board, like everybody, in a very rare, and they were all like, I think personally that writing like good upbeat worship songs is very hard. Like it's just like, it's very hard for them not to be cheesy. You know, it's very hard for them to have a long shelf life in the sense of like that you want to play them a lot, all these things. And we wrote a lot of and I think it's just reflective where we're at. Like obviously our community is back, there's growth, we're seeing more life change, you know, and it's just like, and that is reflective in what we're creating, you know. Whereas, you know, while during a time of isolation and quarantine, and honestly, Carlos and I are both not just part of the worship team, but we're pastors as well. And I know for us, it was very hard to be like, it was very hard to be a pastor like online.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And, you know, I'm sure you've read and seen like articles, like it was incredibly difficult for pastors across the board. And so many pastors quit. You know, so many pastors just were like, I can't do this, you know, because you're putting in all the work without really any of the payoff. Because the payoff that for anybody who's in ministry, the payoff is life change. Is people, you seeing people's life change and your relationship with people and your friendships. You know, at church, when you work for ministry, it's much more than a job. You know, it becomes family, it becomes community. You know what I mean? And to take the whole kind of community, family, life change part out of it is just death. You know what I mean? It's just so hard to just kind of like, then it really feels, it almost kind of becomes like a corporate job. You know, it becomes kind of like, you just gotta stay connected, you know, send the email, do the thing, you know what I mean? Like, and we're all doing the best that we can to create like great experiences for people online. And we know that they're helpful, but it's definitely not a substitute to being in a room together, to seeing people's faces, period, you know? So I think that restraint or something that, you know, we see on the album is part of that maybe we're not at such just a riotous place of like, woo, you know, party, you know, and it's going to get so loud because we're, you know, there's intensity, but it's not, it's just restrained because of where we're at. You know, the intensity maybe is more in our cry to God than necessarily our, you know, exuberance or, you know, celebration, what have you.
Well, and it really translates. That it's funny, you know, that you mentioned that, because, you know, for me as a worship pastor, I mean, I remember talking to my pastor and being like, this has taken away all the things I love about leading worship, which is singing 100%. With people, with being together, with like gathering, and just giving me all the stuff I hate, which like preparing the lyrics and making sure that everything lines up and creating production. Like these are the things that I didn't sign up for this, you know, none of us did, you know? And so, but the thing that I thought was really beautiful about your guys' approach is that, yes, it's restrained, but it's also hopeful, and it really does translate. I'm curious how this translates to your own community, because, you know, there's this intimacy. There's, you know, I guess, like, I love that you mentioned that you actually kept the demo vocals. Like that was one of the things that just, and I was listening on headphones, right? So you get to kind of really get more of the experience, but I was just like, man, the music is just so wide and the vocal is right here. And it's not a bunch of verb and delay. And it's just like, a lot of times you guys were doubling vocals, right? Kind of like thickening them that way. And then like the BGVs, you can totally hear the kind of gang vocal sound, which kind of gives, like, you know, I think we've all gone through this thing where we want to be with people, but we've also seen value in being alone and being still and being quiet. And like, there are things there too. So I'm curious, now that you're back to gathering and you have all these songs, and like how do these translate in your own congregation?
I mean, I think that's been, for me, so Andres and I were both in different campuses. Like, I help with the worship team here in Hollywood, and Andres is in Pasadena. And I think that for me, this has been like one of like the biggest surprise from the album. It's been playing the songs live and seeing the response from people. Because Andy said in the beginning, like, we're so used to playing the songs live and seeing the reaction, and like kind of like do like we have this unfair advantage of being able to like try the songs before we put them out to know if they're good or not. Before the pandemic, and now with this album we didn't have that, and it definitely has been a surprise just seeing how people are responding to the songs when we play them live. And even for us as a team too, like we don't I think like that same like essence that you feel in the album, like the organic like rawness, to the song. I think we've been able to translate that to a live experience too. We're not playing the songs like just the way that they sound in the album. We're finding a way of creating that same experience, but now with people, like finding parts of the songs that it feel better to repeat this verse or a chorus or a bridge more time, or it feels better to build in this moment, or to like do this part down more like softer when we're singing at church. And I don't know, to me, like I right now, like every time that we get to play one of the songs from the album in the context of corporate worship, it is so special to me. Like I just love seeing people responses and yeah, and I feel like the songs, like they even speak to you kind of like on a different level, or different frequency. So for the people, I mean, anyone who's listening or watching, like I encourage people to try these songs live, to try them at church, and like find your own way of playing it live. We're working right now, like this actually Sunday night, we're doing a worship night here, and we're recording all the songs live with the idea of like eventually like releasing a live version of most of the songs. And yeah, it's been really, really cool to see how people are responding to the songs when we play them live.
Well, and like with you guys, it's like you guys are the pastors at your church, right? So because of that, your people trust you, right? So when you bring a song before them and go like, yes, this is authentic to who we are, like they can engage right away, because they're like, well, we know you, and you're bringing us something and you're giving us voice, and they can engage right away. Do you guys think, how would you encourage other worship leaders and pastors to introduce these songs to their congregation? Because I listen to them and I'm like, there's the one, like, this is how I thank the Lord, is just such a, like, obviously this just fits the congregational setting, right? A lot of the other ones are more intimate. And so when I think about it for myself as a worship pastor, going like, oh my gosh, I love these songs. Like I'm going through, like, I'm about to leave on an overseas trip tomorrow, and I can't wait to just like download this record and just listen to it over and over and just kind of be in it and like really experience it all. But from initial listening, I was like, oh, these are songs that I just want to meditate on.
Yeah.
Wonder where they fit in my community. Do you guys have any thoughts on introducing some of them in a more corporate setting? You have the most experience.
Yeah. I mean, you're totally right. I think that just really practical. I think a song like How Do I Thank You, a song like I Need You Now, they're definitely more like intimate moments that would be harder to fit in like a typical worship set. We did do this past Good Friday, we did How Do I Thank You as like to create like a moment. At least I don't know when you guys did it, Carlos, but we did it like kind of like for the communion time, so it was like, it lends itself for that, something more where people are not, they're probably not singing along, they're just listening and they're taking it in, and being caught up in like hopefully the beauty of it and they're reflecting. And so I would encourage anybody to take maybe some of the songs that you feel like on our album that are like that, and they're like special moments, that you might create in your community, more intimate moments as opposed to congregational, let's all sing together moments, which I feel like those moments like that are good from time to time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then another thing is like Carlos is saying, like just trying, some of the songs are like the same chords, or like This Is How I Thank the Lord are the same 4 chords the entire song. So you can mess with that. Like Upper Room just did a version of it and they posted it online, and they did their whole own roadmap. They just they basically did whatever they wanted, but I loved it. And it was, they did a 20-minute version of it, just to give you an idea
of a 3.5 minute song.
Those guys, man, I tell you, As somebody who teaches songs as they are on the record, sometimes those come across like we just can't.
There's no way.
Is there a studio version of this?
Yeah, I mean they are an example of they are masters of like creating moments. You know what I mean, or letting things kind of sit and let them marinate a little more. And so I would encourage you to check that out. Like they're the upper room version of This Is How, because they what they did was really beautiful, and it was some of the stuff is like, oh, that's interesting, but then some of the stuff is like just really cool, and how they built it, broke it back down and whatever. It gave us ideas, on how to do it live, or different things we can do live. So and then we another last example, this song To Your Arms, we did it live a couple of times and the response was great, but when we did it live, it was so great because my wife came up with like a little like spontaneous quote unquote like tag to sing. So it was like a new section that was birthed like playing it live.
Yeah.
And then we changed the chord here and there, to give it an extra, to the point that we feel so like we're like, dang, I wish that was on the album. Like we already released it to the world, and now when we do it live, we learn.
B-side.
Yeah. So maybe, who knows? We'll probably release like a live version of that one too. But it's just that like kind of like experimenting. One thing that we have no idea with yet how to do live is Unexpected Roads. I mean, we can do it, but it's just like, how are we going to do it like in front of people? Like, what do we do with the instruments and like, how do we, that one we have to figure out. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Man, I am so excited to dive into this more. I think you guys really tapped into something pretty special. One question I always like to close with is, if you're a musician and you make a record, there are moments for you that are like, oh man, when this happens, that the way the beat drops right there, or like this moment when everybody comes in singing, or I just love this riff. Are there key moments on the record just for you guys personally that you're like, man, I just love how that comes together? I know they're all your children, but you can choose a favorite.
That's a good question. Do you have anything from the top of your mind, Andy?
There are so many, but I would say the song Rejoice, the last one.
The vocals, the
vocoder like type of thing that we did, the instrumental. I first hearing that, I was like, this is so good. We literally just recorded Mariah singing any note in the scale. Just sing any note. And it's like it's literally like you taking the piano and just going like that to a chord. But it turned out so beautiful, and it felt so like, whoa. I love that moment. I also love that song because that song was a group. We wrote it like we usually write songs like 2 or 3 people, but Rejoice was like 6 of us in the room, just all, recording, working on it together. And so it's rare that we do a song like that. I think that becomes one of our favorites. So yeah, that's a moment for me that I really love.
I think for me, there's like, again, many, but Unexpected Roads, at the end of the song, like the last time that we repeat the chorus, the song kind of like stopped playing, like it just like drops, and there's like this random chord progression that happens. And it is a chord progression that we were playing around when we first did the demo, and somehow it stayed all the way to when we released the album, and it's there. And I love when it drops to that chord progression, and like the vocal arrangement. I think it's pretty sick.
Yeah, I think just in the, like I said, in the little bit that I've actually gotten to sit and listen to it, it's just like I can't. It just made me come back and be like, all right, I want to do this more. Like I'm so glad I have to fly for like 20 hours or whatever, so I can listen to this the whole time.
That's awesome.
But guys, yeah, I I really do. I think you've come up with something really unique and special, and hearing your heart around it and for your people, and the pastoral side of it is really powerful too. And so, I think whether you use songs like this in your worship gatherings, or whether you use it as your own personal worship times, it's like we as worship pastors, I think a lot of times get so set on, well, I got to get this thing out, I got to make this happen, I got to make sure the team gets it, that's not overflowing from something that we are doing, and that in our own intimate times. And so for this song, I'm gonna have to find some spots where I can use it congregationally, but this will just live in that prayer closet space for me. And we really need people to keep making those kind of songs. They're really important for us. And so
that's awesome.
Very life-giving to guys that are in the ministry. So thank you so much. I appreciate you guys taking the time, and we look forward to diving in more.
Man, that album is really great.
I know.
I actually didn't know that they were coming out with a new album until I was listening to a service from a different church, and they were leading a song, and they led a song, and I was very surprised because I hadn't heard it before, and I usually know worship songs. I usually know them. And I was surprised, so I just assumed that church had written it until I again looked up who wrote the song. As I do. And it wasn't them. It was Mosaic. And I was so surprised because then I went on Spotify and I looked them up and I found them. And that song was the only thing out so far. But then the following week, the album was out. And as I listened to it, I was like, dang, this is very different from Mosaic.
Yeah, it is. And it's so in my zone. It's just, for me, everything, it's what I like. It's what I like to listen to. It's what I like to lead. I don't necessarily in my own church have all the production opportunities that they have. But at the same time, I can take those songs and I go, okay, I can bring these in.
Yeah. It feels very home churchy.
Yeah,
in some
very
ways.
much so.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's all still, I loved how they talked about, how it was they really did it on their own because they were in COVID. And so it actually created a different sound. And it's interesting how now that they're introducing it to their own church, how it's actually changing the songs. They're talking about oh, we added this tag. Oh, I wish that tag had been on it.
Wow.
But I think ultimately being able to release something as a complete project, because whenever you have a producer or whatever, a producer or a mixer, somebody who's giving you additional input, I love that. I love co-writing. I love having additional input. But a lot of times you end up sacrificing what your real vision is because you're meeting this way. And we kind of have this thing of okay, well, when you do that, it's always better. And it's it's not always better. It can just be different. And so I'm excited that, they talked a little bit about well, we might do some live recordings. So I'd love to hear how those songs translate live, because I can see how they would. Because they left so much room, it gives them room to grow and do different things with them.
And I could see where maybe the album wouldn't, the songs on the album wouldn't work for a bigger community church type environment where it is very heavy on production, because these songs are so, I don't know if little is the right word. They're very just
subdued. They're restrained.
Yeah, they're restrained. So it'd be really cool to see that difference and compare them to of just this, it's almost acoustic, but not it's version. Not. And then the live version, that'll be really cool.
I know.
I hope they do it.
I really do too. It's, I enjoyed it. I obviously from the interview, I was just about to take off to Norway. I actually used the first song on the record, How Do I Thank You? I used that as an example in a workshop of how a song is arranged.
Oh, wow.
Because it's so, every little part matters. And, a lot of times when we're playing live or when we, these kind of bigger records, the reason why I have a job is because I have to take 7 guitars and put them into one.
Right.
Whereas this record is so this guitar has this part and it's very intentional and that's all there is. And then this one has this part and it comes together. So if you have a smaller band, you can create these things. You might not use necessarily some of the loops and that kind of thing. I loved them talking about keeping some of the demo vocals and just being that was the best one.
Right.
That was the best one. So we just
can't top that.
Nope. No, sometimes you just catch that moment. So love the record. Really excited about it.
Yeah. Well, if you want to explore more arrangements for songs, if you have a smaller team or if you don't, head over to worshipartistry.com and try it out. We have over 600 song lessons that Jason has spent many a times teaching and
So many
hours. But check it out. You can get a 21-day free trial, and it'll be great for you and your team.
It will. We'll see you there.